Good day, everyone around the world. My name is Helenique Argeru, and I am interviewing special guests for Women of Truth, looking at personal truth and what it takes women to step into their power and into their brilliance and into their beauty, knowing how to be real and how to be really themselves. Today I have Ahana Lara with me from Queensland, Australia, living on the Golden Coast. She's actually the founder of Propel Your Business, market domination, media PR, lead and client attraction, business transformation are all areas of expertise for Ahana. And I'm excited to share her with you because we are working together on special projects. You'll hear about them soon. And she's really very spiritually minded and very interested in the future of marketing and what really is changing in the marketplace nowadays and how we can match up with that. Welcome, Ahana. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me, Helenique.
So it's a very interesting conversation that we've been having about you as a marketeer and how you help your clients leverage and the kind of summits and projects that you've been running already in the space of marketing and also in spirituality. So I wanted to start off just finding out a little bit more about you and what's really helped push you, do you think, into becoming someone that's more interested in self-development and really pulling that into your business life and your professional outlook. So what would you say was one of the most challenging moments, let's say, that you had in your life that you're happy to share with us? Of course, we don't want all your deep, dark secrets, just something you're really happy to share that also gives you a kind of insight and a lesson in life that perhaps you've even really built your life on or you've really helped be guided by. What would you say to that question?
I mean, like with everything that's happening in the world right now, I think we are collectively going through a crisis. So it's an interesting question because we have to, at this time, we have to kind of look at our own personal crisis and see how we move through it and the lessons we learn through it to then understand what's really the change that is really happening in the world. So maybe I can share something. I've gone through several personal crises in my life. As everybody has, but I just probably want to talk about one of them. This was quite a while back, about 10, 12 years back. I had a knee surgery, and the knee surgery wasn't a major surgery, but I had to wait for the knee surgery because I had swelling and internal bleeding. So I had to wait. There was a long waiting period, and then there was a long recovery period. But during that time, both the waiting and the recovery, it was a very painful, lonely, stay in bed by myself kind of a period in my life. And even though, my family was there, I had a house full of people, but that was the first time I actually realized that I felt empty, that there was something empty in my life. And because I'd never had that time to myself or to be sort of be with myself. So that was the first realization that I had, that there is something wrong. And I kind of started reflecting, and what came to me at that time was I had everything. I had a family. I was married. I had my daughter, she was doing fine. I had all these relatives and all these friends, but I just wasn't me. And what I had done is I'd substituted all the roles that I was playing, and I was managing, I was literally juggling all the roles, but it had taken me away from who I was. And it shocked me to see what I'd become. And I had not even taken care of all the issues that I was going through, which, as a lot of people would know, depression does not happen in a day. It's kind of creeps up on you. So in a way that I was living my life in that way, because I was just not in connection with myself. So that surgery, when I was recovering, what I did is I decided I have to do something, because when I looked at 10, 20 years down the line, it was blank. I couldn't see my future. And I realized this is, this is dangerous. So I started meditating, which opened really the door for me to self-discovery, which took another 8 to 10 years. But the reason I wanted to share the story is, as I was going through the self-discovery, I lost a lot of things. I lost my marriage. I lost an 18-year marriage. I lost all the friends and everybody that I'd collected for those 15 to 18 years. I lost everything that I'd collected in the house. I lost the house. A lot of people, because I walked out of it, they said, well, we owe you nothing. So I spent years working through guilt. So I lost a lot during that time. And I had to rebuild my life at 40, rebuild my business at 40, my career at, in a 40 plus, mid 40s, going from nothing to everything. And the reason is that is a full circle, and transformation is never easy. So for a lot of people, especially women, when they say that I want to know the truth, I want to live my truth, the thought that they have to give up all of that becomes too big and too scary. And they go into a personal crisis. And the fact is that a lot of people, the moment they see what they have to lose, they would rather go back to their comfort. And that's what keeps people stuck. And the reason I love interviewing entrepreneurs or people who've actually succeeded in life, because I know they've actually moved through that crisis into transformation. And that is so powerful. The perspective and the experience it gives you is what allows you to lead yourself and lead others. And that transformation process actually creates leaders.
So when you were going to finish it with, so when, yeah.
No, that's pretty much it. So that's what I wanted to, when we talk about what is that one transformative thing, it's not that, it just keeps happening. But once you've gone through that transformation once, then you are risking it over and over again, and that's what creates leaders. That's how you succeed.
Beautiful. It's why I say, and I believe now more than ever post-COVID, that we can only follow leaders who've been through their own valley of darkness. And one more than COVID, because COVID is definitely a valley of darkness for many people. But I think before that, some people have really been through some trying illness, burnout, overwhelm, loss. And it's powerful what you shared. Thank you so much for telling us that. And I love doing these interviews for that reason, because I get to know this deeper life that people live behind the wonderful brilliance they have, their genius, their skills, their expertise is on top of a very real human life experience. And once we see that humanity, there's something about the truth of who we are that becomes so palpable and so palpable and so real that we can relate and really connect and have this great empathic connection. So tell us a little bit more now, Ahana, about you as a little girl. I can imagine 8 years old, and how you were. And you don't need to tell us the whole story or all the details, but what we'd like to know is knowing who you were at 8 years old and who you are now, having gone through that very powerful transformation, and having this insight you have now about yourself, woman, and how we shrink back into comfort zones and how we have to transform through them. What would you tell your 8-year-old little girl, pardon me, about life, knowing what you know now as a wise woman, post 40, reinvented?
Well, actually, the 8-year-old was pretty smart. I still remember I used to sit, I think I was about 5 or 6. I still have this clear memory of sitting on this bright orange sofa. My mom used to have this bright orange sofa in her room. We lived in this joint family. That's a book by itself. I lived in a house with, I think there were over 30 rooms. We were multiple families living under the same house. It's a massive, big Indian joint family house. But we had one room, and out of all the furniture, I don't remember anything, but I remember that bright orange sofa. And because I used to sit there to wait for my dad to come, and then he would, change his clothes and get his tea. Mom would get him tea, and he would sit and I would ask him questions. And I asked him all kinds of questions. I was just like full of it. How big is the universe? Why does the universe grow? I still remember him telling me all sorts of every evening that was our time. And I think that was exactly how I've grown. When my childhood was very intuitive,
Mhm.
curious. I used to create. I used to write poems. I started writing when I was very, very young. I used to write little poems, and then it, became these big pieces that I was writing, but nobody knew about it. I was just doing it by myself,
Yeah.
and in my little journals. But I had that creative, intuitive spirit. And then around 14, 15, I remember I started, and because I just blurt stuff out, I had no filters. That's when people started saying, "You're really odd. You shouldn't say things that you shouldn't say things without a filter. You need to see what other people are feeling, what they're thinking." So I started monitoring myself. And I think from the age of about 18 to about that whole period of playing roles kind of was a way for me to filter out that curious creative part of me, which is what I mentioned in the story that I lost. So in many ways, I would, if I had to go back, I'd just say, just don't lose it, because that was what was guiding me to the next thing and the next thing. I mean, I was choreographing uh, programs for for television at the age of 14. I had shows. I had like 6 to 8 shows every year on stage. So I was a very, very creative person. And then suddenly I lost all of it.
Got it.
And that's because I was trying to play the big girl,
Yeah.
the responsible one.
But don't lose that creative
Don't lose that.
spirit. That's what you would
Yeah,
tell your 8-year-old little girl.
I would tell that. Yes.
Now, knowing yourself and what you've already told us about women and what you've been through now to actually lose that connection and then reactivate it in your later life, what would you say is the biggest lie that women believe? And what do you think is the truth? How do
Really?
women do these things of change and transformation and stuckness and comfort? And what do you think is the biggest lie that they end up believing? And what's the truth?
I'll actually give you a little bit of a spiritual answer there, because I mean, it just hit me when I was sort of reactivating myself as self-discovery. We actually have a lot of unconditional love. Women have unconditional love, tremendous, powerful love. But when you start becoming, sort of get into that space of role playing, and I have to be a wife, I have to be a mother, I have to be a sister, I have to be a daughter, I have to be this, I have to be that, and it just goes, a better friend. We kind of lose that unconditional love side of us. When people say, talk about self-love, they actually don't realize they're talking about that capacity of that unconditional love, like a reservoir, like a container, that anybody who comes near you, boom, there's a transformation, because you're just sitting with that kind of open, unconditional, intuitive love. And I think that is a really powerful thing. For when I started to reconnect, that solves all problems, because you're just you don't have attachments, you don't create walls, you do the work that you're supposed to do from that space of unconditional love. So if you really connect back to that to me is that's the biggest thing. So when I look at myself as a child, then I went through that lost period, and then when I reactivated myself, the creativity comes from there, the empowerment comes from there, the capacity of loving, when you say self-love, loving yourself first, and that's not a selfish thing. In fact, self-love, it's like that oxygen that, when you say, when you're on a flight, you're supposed to give yourself oxygen first before you give it to someone else. If you lose that unconditional love, self-love, then you can't do justice to anybody around you.
Right.
And that's your family, that's the people that you work with, that's your, as a businesswoman, you just will not be able to sustain it. So if you are that container, you're back to being that container, everything else actually falls into place.
So what would you say is leading that losing it, that disconnection with it, like, and what do you think we end up telling ourselves, or maybe we hear from the world that promotes us to lose it? Because I'm really interested to get from you how that becomes something we end up doing from the mind believing certain things. And it's a very common behavior. What you've just described is universal. It's cross-cultural. It's very real. You know, it's often the biggest learning women have is how to put those boundaries down, and really know how to navigate their own kindness and generosity and giving, and this over-giving that sometimes happens. So what do we believe, do you think? What do women believe about themselves, or about being a woman, or about the role playing? You know, that's the part we're looking at, do you think?
Yeah, I mean, it's very simple. You know, we grow up, I mean, we know this from point of view of neuroscience and how our brains work, right? How we create these memories and subconscious beliefs. But if you take another step back, what ends up happening is women themselves have this dialogue. I feel like it's not so much just the society, but women themselves. When I sometimes think about the voice in my head, it's actually my mother's voice in my head. And that voice has a certain, you know, she has these sentences that she always said, you know, as I was growing up, which really messed up with the way I was thinking. And because it was coming from my mother, it was like, yeah, it's the truth for me. So I think in many ways we internalize a lot of what we learn, especially from women who we feel are prominent.
Yeah. And what would
in our lives.
She say? What would she say, your mom? About
you know, simple things like, you know, my mother she's a very generous person, but like, you know, you mentioned, she's over generous. So she would give herself, you know, sort of do a little bit more than what she needed to do. She didn't have boundaries. So every time something would come up, I would not protect myself. I would actually protect the other people first before protecting myself, or creating a boundary for myself. And that actually came from my mom. She would, that's her voice saying, it's all right, everything can be solved with you know, just go and give, and everything can be solved. But that is not true. Not everything can be solved that way. You have to think differently. So a lot of things that we pick up are actually from other women that we think are prominent figures in our life. And that is why it's so important. I have a daughter, and one of the things that I've always tried to do is not to put her in any of the systems or any of the thinking that that I have gone through. And if I do, by mistake or, you know, by habit, I'll say something, I will acknowledge it. And she's 22 years old. She's been living by herself from the age of 18. She started working at that time. She's managed her own university herself, and she's doing just fine through all of this time. And when I look at her, I realize that's who I was, but I never got to experience it because of the idea of it. I internalized everything that the prominent, and not just my mom, but my grandmom, and you know.
Right. And I think we know that whole kind of generational belief and kind of trauma and whatever else we're carrying, generational programming is happening. We know that, but we don't actually know what to do about it, I think, sometimes. So you speak so clearly to the point of something to do with over giving, that problems can be solved when you just give. And so somewhere there's a belief there that if we are the ones that are the givers, or that if we keep
nurturers,
if we is that what you said, generous?
Yeah, nurture. I said nurture.
Right.
Nurture.
If we're nurturing others, then we solve the problems. And I think that is something I have lived with too. So I totally relate to that. And the truth is that not all problems can be solved that way, and that there is a bigger conversation about unconditional love that we need to be having also with ourselves as we do with others, and that actually others are not always the most important part of the transaction either, like that we are all important. So I think that's a very, very interesting way of thinking about it all. And we see now in this women's movement, so many things are being revealed at this time. We have the Me Too movement,
Yeah.
we have women conferencing, we have so many associations, groups, networks, from business breakfasts that are exclusive to women, to retreats, to tantra, many, many things. And I wondered, what do you think about all of this? Is there anything you would add or anything you want to say about the rise of women into all these, let's say, more visible positions and the work that's being done there?
I mean, it's needed. First of all, it is very, very much needed because it's one thing I wanted to sort of as I've been working on myself, I've got to realize it's not about a man or a woman. It's not about this is masculine, this is feminine. It's about, you know, my partner calls it the binary third. He's a scientist, and he, you know, there's a masculine energy, there's a feminine energy, magnetic energy, electrical energy. When you put them together, there's a third energy that comes out, and Tesla called it the radiant energy, which is what he says is the binary third. And the idea that actually you are present, you're neutral, you're source, and that's it. So we do talk about, you know, the feminine rising, you know, the goddess rising and all of that stuff, which is, yes, to have a counter sort of point to what has been happening. But the ultimate thing is about reaching your true happiness or true peace, which is a neutral energy. When you're there, no systems apply. And it is the most powerful space to be, because you're not attached to anything. You're not getting into any perspective, spiritual or otherwise. I mean, even spirituality is a perspective. Anything in this world is a perspective. But for you to act from a space of, you know, what we say is empowered space or an empowerment, it's actually a neutral space. And a lot of leaders balancing this, you know, between the masculine and feminine and sort of going through the transformation, they actually arrive at that space. And that space is just pure, straightforward, that radiant energy, binary quantum space where they can do anything, any possibility. They can be, you know, they can direct the energy. The masculine energy is very, you know, directed, and they can do and they can take actions. They can be the reservoir, very feminine, and be intuitive. They can do both all at the same time, but you have to be in that space to do it. And I think people are moving more and more towards that. So a lot of the rising leaders will have actually reached that space and work from presence. They work intuitively. At the same time, they're able to take the action. So they're able to balance both the energies within themselves, men or women. Once they reach that space, that is powerful.
And that's really the work that you and I are busy working on, is how to translate and explain that in terms of business marketing and everything else that's shifting into this higher consciousness around coming from that space. So I love that you mentioned it. And I'm now also thinking how that's relating to these women becoming more and more able to detach from the projections and the perspectives, like you say, by kind of constellating this feminine energy enough so that they can also really activate it more neutrally. And I think I think it's happening, because there are some women rising. But yeah, it's good for us to just recontextualize and know that it's not just about the yin or the feminine. It's more about that being able to combust into this binary third that you call it. I call it 11. And as you were speaking, I was thinking, I would love to write now another book called 11, which talks about how one and one come together and they create 11, which in mystical terms is such a powerful portal.
It's the gateway, right? That's what it is.
Yeah.
That is and in science, that is exactly where, that's the point where the energy comes from one dimension to another. So it's exactly that. It is a gateway.
So maybe we're going to write another book about that. Anyway, so tell us now, what are you most excited about? What are you most passionate about in your life? And a little bit more about your genius type and what people can do with you or accomplish with you as an expert.
Well, you know that the last 20 years I've been basically working on marketing, but I actually started my career as a journalist. I mean, I was just out of university. I started as a journalist, and then I worked with a lot of newspapers. But what I realized is, that whole idea of that storytelling, that always stayed with me. So as I was working in telling other people's stories, I moved from just writing sort of features to fill the gaps to actually doing supplements, marketing supplements, 8-page supplements. And then I did the one thing that really changed my career was a book. I did a special edition of the Air India. I was in India at that time. The Air India in-flight magazine, they had a special edition, and that kind of got me a lot of offers after that, because I coordinated that together, and I was in my early 20s when I did that. So that's when I started moving. My daughter was born. I moved into marketing. And then for me, it has been working with large companies as well as small businesses and solo entrepreneurs, and to simplify the marketing, because marketing is really very simple, because a business, any business, big or small, is about creating value for a specific group of people. If you don't create value for a specific group of people, you don't have a business. So it's about creating the bridge between, hey, this is my special value, these are the benefits I can give you, to that other the group of people who really, really need it. It is simple, and it follows human behavior. Good marketing always follows human behavior. So if you think about it, referral marketing, for example, word of mouth marketing is the most powerful marketing, and yet very few people use it as part of their marketing strategy. So as I started doing this more and more, I started realizing that people are getting caught in the jargon, and they're getting caught in this, I don't know, 1,500, marketing courses that are out there, and the, people who teach the most difficult, form of marketing ever. It will take you ages to understand it. But if you really simplify it down over the next 30 days, this is what I want to achieve. The simplest forms of marketing are available to you, and you can get it done very, very quickly.
Right.
And it's not a mystery. The strategies are the same. They've changed. The tactics have changed. The different apps have changed. And you have to know that. As a marketer, you keep training on that and keep upskilling yourself. But when you come to the fundamental way of marketing yourself or your business, it is all about human connection. It is all about simplifying it and finding the shortest path to creating that bridge between you and
others,
the audience. So that has been, and being very authentic about it. And authenticity is also a huge part of marketing, because things are changing a lot now. Now it's become really, really important to be very authentic in your marketing. But between authenticity and using the simple fundamentals of marketing, you can grow a business very, very fast. And especially if you're a small business owner or a solo entrepreneur, these strategies work. I mean, I've worked with larger businesses as well, but they work. And so it's kind of been my sort of an experiment with myself, because I was going through my own transformation as well. And I had to remember when I said that, when I came here, I just had to build a business up really fast. Yeah. So the first online blog I did, I made 150% ROI on it within 45 days of starting the project. So which means I did the whole blog, I launched it, and I made 150% back from that project. And I started documenting things like that, because it doesn't require a lot. It just requires a easy plan that goes with your flow and just implementing it. Wow. So I've been doing things like that as experiments. Sorry, you were saying?
So I hear the back end and the whole process from journalism to marketing, and how you really help large companies, but also now you help small businesses. Where can people find you if they want to work with you, Ahana?
Well, the easiest way to find me is actually on the coaching website, which is www.ahanalara.com. In fact, there's you were asking me whether there was a report or a PDF. There's actually one called 9 Steps to Activate Your Leads, where I put like a year worth of, it's just 9 steps. That's all you need for a year's marketing plan. So I put those 9 steps in a PDF, and you can get that at www.ahanalara.com/activate your leads. It's just one word, activate your leads. And then I'm launching 2 new websites, because I find that right now, wellness entrepreneurs and small business owners, they really need to use simple fundamental strategies to have a jump start. So those 2 websites are being launched as we speak. So that's b2bmarketingsmallbusiness.com and wellnesswebcopywriter.com.
Beautiful. Give us your 3 powerful words that mean so much to you, either connected or separate, that are prayers, catalysts for change, or really just important messages from Ahana and her wisdom in life. 3 words.
I have a very simple, fundamental 3 words that I say to everyone, and all the time. As long as I am happy, that's it. That's all I require. For me, I actually work. I actually say this to myself in the morning meditation and evening meditation, and I check with myself how I'm feeling. Just, I'm happy. Am I, that, if I am good with that, I know I'm not off alignment. I'm aligned, and I'm working on exactly what I need to do.
Wow.
And if I feel, ooh, there is something going on here, I know that I've done something that day or that week that is off alignment, and I question why, and what have I done, and what do I need to do to get back to alignment. So simple. I just keep things simple.
Fantastically simple. I think that's so important, just to bring it all back to the real reality of, like, are you actually choosing to do, have, and to feel, and to be, and to think whatever is needed for you to be happy, because that's the biggest, most powerful resonance we can have. Thank you, Ahana, so much for your time and energy here. It's been lovely learning to understand your world and to be inside how you think and perceive life. And I'm glad that we're collaborating. I look forward to all the work we do together. And thank you so much for being who you are and doing what you do in the world. Thank you for your time.
And thank you, and for putting all this together, Helene. This is beautiful. So thank you so much for doing it.
Yeah. Thank you, everybody, for watching. Lovely to have you with us again. Take care. Bye-bye.